Hello and welcome back to Exotic Gardening UK, your Chris Weekly, and in this week's episode I'll be making some wooden staging or shelving for the greenhouse, and once I've done that I'll be bringing in my Aeoniums that are in the front garden and storing them on the new staging in the greenhouse. Well, that's the plan. So I've set up my miter saw on my workbench and clamped and screwed that down, and I've got the supports either side here as well. I've got a power supply next to me, I've got all my tools at hand. It's time to start making the workbench. So I've got these timbers that I'm going to use to make my uprights, so I'm going to cut these in two to make the legs. I've got some other timbers to make the rest of the structure and battens to make the actual surface at the top. So I'll go through it step by step and show you how I make the staging. So these lengths of timber are 2.4 metres long, and I've just cut them in half, so I've got legs that are going to be 1.2 metres high. Obviously that's quite high for most people, but I'm very tall, so I want the staging to be relatively tall. Normally you do it in about 90 centimetres, 100 centimetres tall. And I cut them in half, but they're not exactly 2.4 metres in length. So what I've done is I've cut them in half, got my 1.2 metre height on one, and then I've put the other leg against it, and then the height difference of a few mil I've just marked on the longest length, which is this one. I'm just going to cut off the excess so they're both exactly the right height. So now if we just take that off, this should be 1.2 metres, and if I put it next to the other half, we can see that they're exactly the same height. So now I've cut my three 2.4 metre lengths of timber into 1.2 metre heights of timber. So basically cut them in half. So these will be my upright support for my staging / workbench in the greenhouse. And I've also marked on here where I'm going to cut out notches where the horizontal piece of wood will go across to make the horizontal parts of the staging. So rather than just nailing to the side the horizontals like there or there, I'm actually going to cut them out, slot them in, so it's a neater fit and a much stronger joint. And I've also done for my second shelf, I've also cut out or drawn on at 60 centimetres height these areas where I'm going to use my miter saw to cut these out. And just to show you my horizontals that I'm using, these 47mm by 47mm 2.4 metre lengths timbers. So because they're very long, that's why I've got 3 legs at the front and back, just for that extra support in the middle. So it's time to cut out these notches. So now I've set the depth gauge on the miter saw that it only cuts as far down as the bottom of this line, and I've lined it up with my laser. So now I'm just going to make a cut going down, clamped it all in place, and I've done it on just on the inside, and just so it doesn't go quite as far as that, just to check the depth, and then I'll make any adjustments if I need to. So I'll just do that. And you can see that's cut to exactly the right depth. And what I'll do now is make a series of vertical cuts all in a line to get to the line on the right, and then I can just chisel out that piece of wood, and then hopefully my horizontal piece of wood will slot into the gap. So there you can see doing lots and lots of cuts in a row and just picking out the middle bits. It's made the notch the size I need, and I'll just smooth off the bottom here just with a little wood chisel just to get rid of these little bits that I've missed, and I'll continue doing this with all the other legs. So I've got my notch cut out for my shelf here, I just need to clean that up. And then for the top shelf at the top, I've used a mitre saw to do one cut there, and because I can't fit the piece of wood in horizontally into the mitre saw, I'm just going to use my jigsaw just to cut from here to meet this point to cut this part out. So we've cut out and cleaned the notches for the shelf here, and we've done the top as well with the jigsaw on the mitre. So now we're ready to assemble the horizontals into the notches and screw them into position. So now I've got my two sides, put my horizontals in, and I've screwed that in as well, and I've also put these braces in going across. This is upside down at the moment, so you can see that nice joint at the end here, and I put a screw in the back here as well. And then I've put, this is upside down as I mentioned, these braces in, so when I flip this the right way around, I'll be able to put my slats going across, which I'm cutting from long lengths into 60 centimetre lengths, and then the slats will go across here. So to make the workbench even stronger and more stable, I'm going to do some diagonal braces where the corners meet, the horizontals and the verticals, and so that it will keep it even more rigid, so I can put a lot more weight on the bench and it won't sag or move with time. And what I'm going to use is the same as the horizontals, so these 47 by 47 millimetre planed treated timber posts, and I'm going to mark along the post 25 centimetres and cut them straight across, and then I'm going to get my 25 centimetre length, put it on to my mitre saw at a 45-degree angle and cut through there. So I've got two 45-degree angles at either end of the 25 centimetre lengths, and then I'll screw them onto the staging. I've got 16 corners to brace, so I've cut 16 lengths of 25 centimetre length timber, and now I just need to cut these at an angle. So I'm going to set it on my mitre saw to 45 degrees so that it will cut these at an angle, and they'll end up with something like this. Well, I've just managed to get all my cuts done before the heavens opened. It's absolutely chucking it down outside now, where I couldn't be doing my mitre saw table if it was raining this hard. So, got all my cuts done, and we've got all the lengths with 45-degree angles both sides, so these will fit under here, nice and flush, and I can just screw into the wood on both sides. I've pre-screwed them all at the same sort of distance, and that's just so it makes it easier, because these aren't too bad to screw in here, but when I go down underneath I'll be laying on my back. It's a lot easier if I've already started the screwing. So I'll just make that flush here. This wood here is the same width as the wood above, and then we just get the electric screwdriver drill at the right speed and slowly just screw that in until it's nice and tight, like so. And then the same with the lower one, so it's nice and flush with the wood. And that's nice and strong now, and it's providing a lot of extra strength for the workbench. So I've got 16 of these complete, and then the staging is finished. So here is a finished greenhouse staging. I've put my braces on now, and I've put the slats on top So these were 1.8 metre length of batten that I've just chopped into 3, so they're 60 centimetres long, and I've screwed each one individually on here, and they're nice thick battens, and they're very, very strong, not moving at all. And the way I've spaced it is basically I put one batten on at the edge, screwed it down, got another batten, and use that as a spacer. So this was my gap in between, and then put the next one by the side of it and screw that one down. So that's all of it done, apart from the last couple of battens, which I'll just finish off in that far corner. And because I've got my nice diagonal braces on, it is absolutely rigid, extremely strong. I'm sure that it can probably hold many hundreds of kilograms of weight if needed. And I'm going to put on some of these grow bag trays, and then I can put my pots and plants on here. So that is how I've made my greenhouse staging that will hopefully last for many, many years. Right, now I have my staging, I can dig up my Aeoniums outside and bring them into their winter home. Now, the Aeoniums have been fantastic this year, 2020. They've grown really well, nice and plump rosettes all around the front garden, which is south facing here. And we've mainly got Blushing Beauty, but we've got a few other types as well. And I'll be bringing them in today to the greenhouse. So most of them I'll just treat as cuttings and just cut off at the base and pot up into a very free draining mix. Now the black ones anyway, they're the ones that I'll actually dig up and put in pots, and same with the Ensete, which are the large bluish ones. But all the rest is a very quick process of just cutting them up at the base and putting them in pots. And I do this because it means the plants left in the ground might re-sprout if it's a very mild winter. It also means I've got fresh plants in fresh compost that haven't got any diseases or bugs on them. So it's a double win. I do leave a few out each winter, the ones closest to the house on the left hand side, and they've survived the last couple of winters by the house, but the rest, the few that I've left more open have all died and perished either in mild winters, so they don't really want frosts. I can get away with a few -1s, -2s, but not many. So it's always advisable to bring these in unless you live in a very, very mild location. Right, let's get on with the job. Right, that's enough cutting material for overwintering. I've basically just cut off all the Aeoniums from the front garden, and let's pick up one to show you. So I've got one like that, just cut it off at the base, and trying to get rid of all the old shriveled leaves, because they do lose a lot over winter anyway. Just pull off a few more, and then these will go into the greenhouse. So I've mixed up a mixture of 50% perlite and 50% John Innes No. 1 seed sowing compost in these pots. Ideally I would use grit, but I just don't have any grit, so I've used perlite instead, which does the same job of making it really, really free draining. And I'm using the seed compost again just because I have it knocking about and I've not used it this year. I want to get it used within the season. You can use any compost, any multi-purpose compost, absolutely anything, because all you're doing really is keeping these ticking over winter, these Aeoniums. So if we just get one here, pick that one up. This is quite a small one, and you just need to remove all the dying and shriveled leaves from the base, and if you can leave it a few days, all the better, just to callus over the end of these. But if not, you can just basically stick them in the pot into the compost, press that down. This compost is very dry, and so is the perlite, and that can just stay in the pot just like that over winter. I will water this in a few weeks' time, just when it's settled down a bit, because they do actually grow at the most in autumn and winter, do Aeoniums. So they don't want to be completely dry over winter, otherwise they'll shrivel up. The little centre rosette will probably survive all winter even if you didn't water it, but if you want to keep quite a lot of the leaves nice and plump, then you do need to keep it slightly watered over winter. And they'll stay on this staging. One other thing to point out is they do need light, good light ideally, so that's why they're on the staging in full light here. I've done them in trays before, just left at the ground level, and they've done okay, but the ones in the most light have done the best over winter. So I'll try to keep these with maximum light where possible. So that's one done. Got a few hundred more to pot up and fill all the staging. So back to the onset bananas that we were drying off. So last week these were dug up, if you remember from last week's episode, and I've left them actually all week. I said I was going to leave them 3 or 4 days, but it's been a week upside down in the jungle hut just to dry off as much as possible. So these have dried out quite well. There's a bit of soil left on that can just sort of come off now because it's very dry. And now it's time to bring these into the greenhouse the right way up. But before I do that, I'm going to get some yellow sulfur powder just to dust all over the roots and the base, and that really just helps stops fungus and mold growing on the roots and the base of these plants. It's not essential. If you keep a nice dry atmosphere, then you don't need the sulfur really, but I'm just doing it as a belt and braces approach just to make it so it's a very acidic surface so that molds and fungus won't try to grow on them over winter. So it just helps. And these are going to be put into empty pots the right way up, no soil, nothing else whatsoever, and they're going to be kept at about 10 degrees, so completely frost free over winter. But because these are clean, because there's no soil on them or anything like that, you could put them in an attic, you could put them in a cupboard in your house, anywhere, an outhouse if it's attached. As long as it's frost free, it doesn't have to be light, it can be completely dark, it's completely fine because they're not growing over winter. You might get the central spear of foliage trying to grow a bit if you're in a warmer condition, but because they're not getting watered, they won't continue to grow for more than a week or 2 or try to grow, and they'll be fine like that up until May next year if you really wish to wait that long. They can be stored for months at a time, but obviously the shorter the dormant the better. So these will be started again probably next March. So that is dry storing the onset bananas for 2020-2021. Thank you for watching this edition of Exotic Gardening UK. Certainly got a lot of jobs done this weekend in the garden with the Aeoniums and Ensetes and the staging for the greenhouse. There's plenty of jobs to do each week, and obviously I carry on with my weekly videos throughout the winter. If you don't subscribe already, please do. Press the subscribe button below and you'll see my weekly videos where I do jobs seasonally throughout the year. I do how-to guides and also garden walkthroughs of everything to do with exotic plants. So thanks for watching.